Tandem Nomads, episode 222.
I think even if you feel like you don't have a lot of time, it's super important to, even if it's 5 minutes a day, to do something that's going to move you towards your dream.
Hello, Nomad Nation. Welcome to Tandem Nomads, the podcast show and entrepreneurship platform where you can find great inspiration and tips to grow a successful, portable business and thrive in your global nomadic life. This is your host, Emel Deregi. Oh boy, time. Isn't that the one big issue that every single human being on earth must have? Not only when we have big dreams and are really busy, but even more when we're a mother, a stay-at-home mom, and on top of it, even solo parenting. So, we're going to talk about that big challenge that a lot of you might experience with time management, and specifically for mothers out there who are trying to juggle it all. I know how difficult it can be. And to talk about this topic, I want to introduce you to Rhoda Bangerter. Rhoda, are you ready for this ride?
Yes, absolutely.
Oh my God. I can't wait for this conversation together. You've been so inspiring. And let me introduce you to Rhoda, Nomad Nation. So, Rhoda is the founder of A Multicultural Life. She's a certified coach for solo parenting moms and long distance marriages, and the author of the book, Holding the Fort Abroad. She was raised in France with a Welsh dad, a Syrian Armenian mom, and is married to a Swiss man. Her husband has traveled abroad to work throughout almost their whole marriage. And during those years, Rhoda had to be solo parenting while experimenting all different solutions to be able to take care of her family, keep nurturing this relationship on long distance while making her dreams a reality. So we're going to talk about her inspiring journey and her tips as well. What has helped her to make this happen? So, Rhoda, this was just a quick overview of who you are. I'd love it if you could just give me a little bit more insight about your journey and how did that go regarding finding your own source of fulfillment for you. How did this journey come to life?
Sure. Thank you so much, Amel, for having me. And
My pleasure.
looking forward to this conversation too. I worked, in my 20s, I worked in office management and HR. Actually, I trained as a teacher first, and I was like, oh, no, so then I worked in office management and HR, trained there, and then met my husband and continued working for a while. And then he was just traveling a lot. He was working as a humanitarian aid worker, and I'd just moved countries, and it just got too much for me at that point. And I stopped working, and we had a little one by that point, your newborn. So I stayed at home for quite a lot of years. I volunteered and did various projects and mainly raised our children and moved countries with my husband to follow his work. So, yeah. And then what happened was we came back from New York, and about 5 years ago, and I had a bit of an identity crisis. The children were getting older, and I was like, I need to do something that I'm passionate about and find my own passion, my own work to do, something that can grow, but that can also work with us moving around a lot. So I actually found a coach, and that's where I discovered, oh boy, I'm multicultural. So that plays into identity. And I also, started, I love the analogy between coaching and therapy. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you've heard it before. Therapy is archaeology, so you go digging in your past, and coaching is architecture, so you're building your future.
Ooh, that's good.
So it was really about looking at how I wanted to see my future, how I saw my future, and that's when it started coming together a little bit. Yeah. So it was so transformational for me that I ended up becoming a coach.
Exactly. You ended up becoming a coach and embracing, helping multicultural families.
Exactly.
And And how did you come about along the way to then be interested specifically on solo parenting?
Right. So a few years ago, my husband and I started talking about split locations, which is basically one of the partners going to live in another country for work. And I started asking questions and basically found loads of families who had done it or who were in the middle of doing it. And there was a lot of advice, and some of the advice was similar. And I thought, there's something here, right, that needs to be shared because it's helping us so much. And then around about the same time, a friend of mine who they were both from the States and they had moved to Switzerland, and she had made a comment, off the cuff, my husband's travel feels so different now that we're abroad. And that got me thinking. And then the other thing that happened was I suddenly realized, as we were discussing split locations, well, actually, we'd been doing it for 15 years. And I'd been, solo parenting, and he'd been traveling for most of our marriage. So he basically did all the different frequencies. He did Monday to Friday, irregular travel, a couple of weeks at a time, emergency travel, the lot. And they all have their different sets of challenges and pros and cons.
Yeah, 15 years of solo parenting, basically. And we make the difference between solo parenting and single parenting because you are in a relationship. So actually, before we go into the real topic of today, it's already difficult enough to find the space and the time and the commitment to be able to achieve our goals and already in the normal, usual life. But on top of it, when you're solo parenting with kids at home, and also having to maintain a relationship, right? That's also another part. It must be quite challenging. So for those who might not know, I'm sure if you're listening, Nomad Nation, and you are solo parenting, I'm sure you already have an idea of that could be. But I would love to have a bit of a insight if you could share with us, what is it like? What are the challenges you have in terms of time and making yourself a priority when you're solo parenting?
Yeah. I think it's what you said, there is a difference between being a single parent and a solo parent, even if it's a single parent with a partner still in the picture, where you're co-parenting. Some of the mums that I've spoken to, they mentioned that, for example, their single parent friends get a lot of support. Because their friends and family know that they're single parenting. Sometimes the challenge is when you're solo parenting, people don't really know it, that your partner's gone maybe 80% of the time. And so it's a little bit hidden, really. It's this hidden single parenting that can be difficult. So you're carrying a lot of the daily responsibilities. But people aren't necessarily aware of it. So it's Joanne Mutter, she wrote her PhD on this, and she calls it role overwhelm, which then translates into role ambiguity, because when your partner comes back, it's like you have the roles change again. And it's like, who's parenting now? Which bit are you doing? And, so you're readjusting, which is another very common challenge. And so maybe when your partner's home, you might have more time. You might actually have less time. And then when they're gone, you might have more time, or time at a different time, or you might have less time. It's just constant flux of having a partner leaving, a partner coming back again, and this readjustment, and even for time readjustment, it can change.
So what if I'm hearing this well, for me, what I see like a big challenge is the lack of stability, which makes it difficult to plan and to work on your goals and things like that.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, if your partner's traveling irregularly, that's my least favorite. It's much harder to plan time. You practically, some moms have said to me, and I've done it myself, is you've got to go ahead and just make your own schedule. And then they have to kind of fit into that. You can't constantly be readjusting. You need some sort of stability.
Yeah, that's great. So, Rhoda, I've been watching your journey in the past months now. We've known each other for a while now, and it's been
Mm-hmm.
very inspiring to watch you. And I've been watching you, first of all, develop your working on developing your coaching skills and your coaching business, and then working on your research because you decided to do an extensive research on solo parenting,
Yeah.
and so that you could write your book. And you actually wrote a whole book that you're launching now called Holding the Fort. And
Yeah.
God knows how much time just writing a book that consumes, and how much commitment on top of everything else, knowing on top of it that you had 2 children to take care of, solo parenting, let's not forget the lockdown, the pandemic, and so many other things that happen here. So can you tell us, like, what has helped you be able to commit to your dreams and not give up on your dreams? I saw so much determination in you, but
Okay.
what was out, like, how did you manage to not give up?
Okay. Ooh. Well, just to come back a little bit to your former question, and it answers a bit of this one about the mindset. One of the things that I did over the last few years is to be my own manager. Because I think if you have an employer, every year you get an appraisal, you get asked what you want to do for training, or you're offered training, or you're talking about career advancement with your manager. So I think it's important, if you don't have an employer, to be your own manager and to be thinking, okay, what do I want to do? Where am I going? What training do I need? And then the other mindset shift was counting myself in and saying, you know what? I mean, I'm supporting my husband in his career. It's okay for me to invest in my career. And it's okay for it to take a little while to grow. And it's going to mean investing in trainers, in training, in mentoring. And that's okay. But that was a mindset shift.
That's so important.
So yeah, to really invest time and money on those things. Yeah. And then what really helped me to keep going, I think, was finding what I was passionate about and really narrowing it down. And I think that first conversation you and I had, where there was lots of different things I was interested in, but really focusing it down and saying, okay, who am I going to serve exactly? What is it that I'm actually passionate about? That kept me coming back to actually doing the work and finding the time and being committed to completing the book. Because
Wow.
I
Okay.
felt,
I did not
yeah, I
know
felt,
that.
okay, well,
This is good.
telling you
So,
now, yeah.
just a background, Nomad Nation. Yeah, Rhoda and I have been working together on developing her business. So that's basically what you're referring to, that first session that we had on narrowing down your target audience, and that
Yeah.
has given you the clarity that you
Yeah,
need.
because otherwise you waste time. You're working on 10, 15 different projects. You don't have a fixed goal necessarily, or a community that you're serving, and the time that's so precious is actually not, it's not being used properly. So for me, that was one of the keys. Then the second one was team, really surrounding myself with the right mentoring, the right support, practical support, which was also a biggie for me, because I'm the kind of person, I was like, no, I should be doing it all by myself. But that wasn't helpful, because otherwise you just work yourself into the ground. And getting a virtual assistant. So really focusing on what I really was passionate about, what brought me joy, and then trying to then delegating to her things that she could do that will help, that was supporting me, really. The other thing that's really interesting is I've seen a lot on social media and in various solo parenting moms have told me that, but it's so difficult to find childcare. And it's like, and it's true, it's like, I need to find childcare. But what I've tried to do is to try and think outside the box for finding time, maybe combining different chores. So you know,
Multitasking.
more like, saying if I need to run an errand, okay, I'll do my 10-minute meditation walk before that, or I'll do my difficult phone call before that, then run my errand, then do, a 10-minute meditation walk, that kind of thing. So or if I need to take my kids out, okay, what do they love doing? What do I love doing? We'll do that. Not necessarily something that drains me and they love.
Oh.
Things like that. Trying to be smart in sort of how to use the time. What can be a teaching opportunity for them, but can also save me time.
That's
kind of thing.
huge. That's super smart, actually. Yeah. Trying to be very smart and intentional about this rather than I take away two things. The first one, I think it's your background from HR, where for me, that's really key. And it is valuable whether you're solo parenting or you're just a solo entrepreneur and you have all the freedom. It is so important to be your own manager and take our own personal development and professional development as seriously as when we work in a company where you have an actual manager who helps you assess your skills, assess your development, and you have a budget for your own development and things like that. You've taken this as a business case. You're like, I'm my own manager and I'm going to set up the resources I need to reach my goals.
Yeah, exactly. Because if for example, you want to work in HR and you have an employer, I want to be a personnel assistant, then I want to get more training, become a personnel officer, then maybe a personnel manager, then head of HR. I don't know, you have sometimes a career path in mind. I think it's harder when what do you think? When you're a solo entrepreneur, maybe you have goals of maybe how you want your business to look, but I think personal development and saying, okay, what kind of training am I looking for? I think is super important. And that's where the investment comes in as well.
So how did you find that courage to invest? Because you did invest a lot of money. Can you list all the things you invested by any chance? Like not the amount, but the type of things you invested in?
I invested in having a coach. Mm-hmm. I invested in the coaching training. And that's time and as well as money.
So life coach, coaching training.
I invested in a marketing coach. Marketing and business coach. I invested in a writing coach. And what else? Various trainings along the way. Just trying to think now. And I invested in therapy.
That's a big one. I think it's important.
Yeah, for mental health, because that was huge. Yeah.
We will talk about that in a bit because I think that's important to discuss it as well. But so many areas, and it reminds me of an episode that I did about building an army around you, building your support system. And I will, Nomad Nation, check it out in the show notes of this episode on tandemnomads.com/222 about how to create that support system, right? This is so important. And you're the living proof of that. But I can imagine it must take a lot of courage to be able to make that investment when you don't make money yet and have that conversation with your partner about that investment. So is there anything you can help those who are on the fence of investing and are scared to invest, how to make that decision in a smart way, but also get the courage to do it?
Yeah. I've got this acronym called SEEDS.
I love that.
And so it's about planting a seed, especially if you kind of feel like you've lost your identity along the way and you're trying to find it again. And so it's about starting. So first you start something, not anything, but something that you feel attracted to, that you feel passionate about. You just start maybe 1, 2, 3 things. Start little. And then you explore those areas. So you start, maybe if you join the PTA, look and see if there's a project you can lead or do their comms or, something like that. Start exploring, just going a little bit more outside your comfort zone within that area. And then you eliminate. So everything you do it on a temporary basis. So you start looking at, what is it that I'm doing that's bringing me joy? What is it that I'm doing that isn't really going anywhere? And you start eliminating and then just picking the few that are really growing and that give you a lot of joy and that you see yourself investing in. So then you develop that. You look at where you need mentoring, where you need training, any further personal development. And then the last S is the strategize. That's where you can do, in the book I put as one of the appendices, I put a personal development plan, which is also for my HR background, right? It's a very simple one because there's lots of resources online, but I just wanted a simple one where you can put your achievements, what you're passionate about, your skills, and then what kind of training you need, and then have a date where you can review that. But that's where you're at a point really where you can invest and say, okay, I've done sort of the work of seeing what I'm passionate about and where I want to develop. Now I'm ready to really go look at training. And that's where, I think if you don't have a lot of time, maybe you might be looking at a 3 to 5 year plan rather than a 1 year plan. But it's okay. It's okay because you're still getting there. Right. And it'll help you along the way to see your progress and say, wow, I'm in year 2 and I've achieved this and I've got this more to go and I'm excited about where I'm going.
I love this acronym of SEED. So start, explore,
eliminate, develop and strategize.
I love it. And I do think that it is a great way to process through. And it is the natural process, right? We start to explore, we volunteer, we try things, and then we realize, okay, now it's time to focus. And that's what come the time, if we want to strategize and we can't do it on our own, to start investing in getting the support we need and the expertise we need to reach that goal. And the second thing that you said for me that's huge is for those who don't have the time. Usually when we don't have the time, we just drop it and we say, I'm going to wait for a better time. What I realize and often tell my clients, there is actually never a perfect time. It never happens, especially if you're a global nomad.
Yeah.
And even with the kids, I see my clients, like when they're younger, they don't have the time. But then when they grow, they're telling me it's crazy. It's actually even more demanding as they grow.
Yeah.
So, and you can't just wait until they're adults with a job to start taking care of your dreams. Otherwise, you just lose it.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is, and I love that, is you don't have to drop it all. It's better to have a long-term plan where you do small baby steps rather than like try to do it all at once.
Yeah. Yeah. And it came out in a lot of the interviews that I did. One of the moms, she said she signed up for like a writing course at 3 a.m., because she was just like, oh my word, I just need something for me that's not breastfeeding or raising children. I need something. And it turned out it wasn't where she is now, but it was her beginning. But a lot of moms told me, they doing a project for themselves and for furthering their own career helped them a lot, and it's life-changing for them. Yeah. Wow. So it's at the beginning, it might not necessarily be what you end up doing, but it's part of the journey of finding what you're going to be doing.
This is so good. And how about the investment itself, like the actual cash you need to take out? Like, do you have like a process to have that conversation with your partner to evaluate? Because obviously it's not a decision unless it's the case. Maybe not, actually. It's not obvious, but I guess this is a conversation you had with your partner, or what do you think about that? Actually, I'm curious to know.
I think for me, it was just a mindset shift. It really was. I think for many years, I felt like I wasn't earning money, and that was a problem for me because I am independent and I wanted to earn my own money. And we were moving around. It wasn't always possible. At the time, I wish I'd known now that it was possible, but at the time I thought it wasn't possible. And I think I just got to the point where I was like, hey, this partnership has got to work for me too, and it's going to mean investing in, like I said, in my training and in a career. And especially as well, the children are sort of teens, you kind of think, okay, in 8 years time they're gone, or 7 or 5 or whatever it is. Where do I want to be at that point? What do I want to be doing? What do I want to be building for myself? What do I want to be working on?
Yeah. And you're building those foundations so that when you have full time, you can then accelerate, but at least you're not starting from scratch.
Exactly. Yes. And in the meantime, it's great as well.
Yes.
Yeah. And I also wanted to show my kids, listen, it's possible. Mommy can work outside the home, And I think Emily Rogers said that, right, when you interviewed her as well, that she wanted to show her girls that to be a working mom. And we have 2 boys, but I also wanted that as well, and it's something that I've always wanted to do. So
being a role model. Yeah. Speaking of which, I remember when we were working together, how much effort you were putting into writing this book and the commitment you had. Like, you were working on your marketing while writing this book. And it was really interesting to see you in action sometimes during our sessions, putting those boundaries and communicating with your kids on your boundaries. Is there any tips that you have for that? Because I saw you in action, how you were saying, hey, this is my time. So how did you do that? Any tips you can share?
No, I think you just have to say, this is my time. No, what I used to do was, because it gets very busy, and we had quite a few challenges, health challenges, and obviously COVID came in the middle. And like I said, you're constantly in flux. But what I did was I rotated my evenings. So in the evenings, I would have 3 choices: chores, rest, sleep, or do my own thing. And so I'd sort of rotate. So one evening, chores, not so much, but sleeping and working, I would rotate, so that I wouldn't be working every night, but I would be alternating, to make it work. Yeah.
And also maybe anticipating. I saw you telling them in advance, hey, I'm going to be on a call, and I would like to not be disturbed during that time. Does that work?
Yes. Yes, it does. It really, really does. Yeah. And I homeschooled I homeschooled in between. No, it really does. I think for younger, the other tip I have is including the other parent.
Oh, well, let's not forget that part.
Yeah, that was a huge, huge one for me as well.
Even with long distance?
Oh, yeah. And I've said it over and over again, and I've said it in different panels that I've been in, and different conversations. And some moms have come back and said to me, it never occurred to me to include my partner in parenting when they're gone.
How does that look like?
Well, I realized one day that my default thinking was, I got this, I'm parenting. Now my thinking is distance a good enough reason for him not to parent?
This is so good.
Is distance a good enough reason for him not to be involved in this parenting moment? So our eldest asked for an iPhone, and I kind of barged in and started sorting it out myself. And then I thought, wait, my husband can be involved in this conversation. He can even take part of the decision. Obviously you can't force someone who doesn't want to be, right? That's a whole other conversation. But, if they want to be involved and they're present, sometimes the challenges is time difference, or they're working long hours. So I think keeping them in the loop of what's going on, even if it's by a regular email or something like that, so that you're not using all your phone conversations for that. But I think that also frees up time. One of the moms, she said, every evening she would put her little one in a playpen. That might be a British word, but, in a play area, a secure play area, next door, she would put, the tablet, and then Papa would read the book for, however long, and then she would have a little bit of time. Or there's lots of different ways that the dad can be. Like my husband does all sorts of reminders. He can do, check homework projects. He can help on homework assignments. He can keep track of things. I don't have to keep track of everything. He can keep track of what they're doing and if they're on top of it or not.
And you share a lot of those tips, right, in the book, or like
there's lots more in the book. Yeah,
this is so good, because you know what I'm realizing now that you're talking about this, and how actually we should not forget that there's a partner here, even if he's far or she is far.
Yeah,
they can be involved. But what's interesting, as you tell me this, I have the sense that even those who are not solo parenting sometimes forget that their partner is part of this. It's not because the partner is working that they should not be involved in making the time for you to be able to do your work.
That is so true. That is so true. And getting partnerships with friends, family. When you live abroad, it's harder to get a support network, but I think I've also learned this year to ask for help and receive help. And that's another thing. Joanne Mutter, in her PhD, she asked the moms why they're not asking. They were all reluctant to ask for help. And the top reason was that they couldn't reciprocate. They just didn't have the time. So if someone is helping me, it's because sometimes it's because I just don't have the time. So I'll have even less time to then help them, right? If I'm really in a dire straits. And so that was an interesting one.
That's a big one, Rhoda.
Yeah.
I love that. I never realized it. When we don't ask for help, it's because we're worried that we need to reciprocate and just can't do it.
Sometimes, yeah.
And what do you want to say to those who think that way? What is the answer to that?
I think I've realized that my friends give because they want to. And often I give because I want to, right? I want to help another person. They're my friend. I want to help. I want to be there for them. I'm not expecting reciprocity. Yes. And I think talking to ourselves and saying that and saying, I can thank them in a different way. I don't have to thank them necessarily in kind right then. I can thank them later. I've also helped people, and it's paying forward. So people have helped me, and then I help other people. So if now I'm saying, listen, I'm not in a position right now to help, say practically someone like I maybe used to. I'm in a position where I'm receiving help, practical help. But that doesn't mean that later on I won't be passing it on. And then maybe helping someone else practically, because I know what their situation is. And I'm saying, you don't have a lot of time. Let me create a bit of time for you and help you with that.
This is so big. Asking for help. I think this is so huge. Which I just want to go back real quick onto something that I found amazing when you went through all of that. Like you were pushing through, and actually let's talk a little bit about, you had the strategies, right? You were good, and you've developed. You need to develop these strategies so that you can commit. But even then, when you commit, you develop these strategies. There's no other words. I'm going to say it, although it's a podcast, but sometimes shit hits the fan.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
So could you share a little bit of the things that happened along the way that could have made you just drop the ball?
Oh, yeah. I mean, my dad died last year. Then my parents-in-law died in December.
So sorry about that.
In 1 week, one from cancer, and then my father-in-law 3 days later from COVID. Obviously, there was the coronavirus that it got difficult because I was homeschooling and my husband was away, and at the beginning we didn't know if he was going to come back or when he was going to come back. And there are a lot of families still stuck like that, where one of the partners is in another country and they haven't been able to reunite.
So difficult.
I got sick in January, and you know what? I'm grateful I had the strategies, because it could have been like really catastrophic. But I think what happened was that there were so many things going on at the same time very quickly in December that I didn't ramp up the help fast enough. And that's what I would say is, even if you have the strategies, I realized two things. One, I was still too close to my limit.
Mm.
And which is basically means I didn't have quite enough margin. There just wasn't space for margin for unexpected events.
That's so good. Having a buffer is important.
Having a buffer. And also, I think stress doesn't necessarily go away. You know, there's always going to be something stressful going on, or I think especially if you're trying to juggle this role overwhelm and working at the same time, trying to parent properly, and be a good wife, and this and this. There's a lot of demands, and I think being able to really tap into managing stress and meditating, but really like ramping it up. We're talking drip feeding it, because I've had to do that, just drip feeding self-care, but also really having big moments. There was a study that came out that those people who took more holidays were less sick. I mean, I don't think we need a study to tell us that. But it was interesting. I think it just came to me like, whoa, you know, taking breaks.
That's important.
It's important to rest your body.
And so what was fascinating to me during that time, I was really impressed, is that yes, you said you needed to ramp up the level of help you needed. And I remember we were talking about that. For example, I remember something like having a cleaning lady, right?
Yeah.
Something new that you might have not even thought about it. Getting a cleaning lady, ramping up that help, but as well, it's just mentally what happened was so hard. And you still managed to stay strong and committed. You never wanted to. I never heard you once say, Amel, I'm done. You never canceled any session. You never, like, what kept you committed despite of it? Of course, we took a break when it was necessary. But in terms of mindset, you never gave up. So what kept you not give up?
I think it was a combination of being passionate about this topic. I think really finding something that really, really, really I'm passionate about, and also seeing the impact that it has for solo parenting parents, and just seeing how many families live where one of the partners travels a lot, and how little it's talked about, because there was just no resources out there when I started this.
Yes.
And just seeing the impact that it was having, and people saying, you know, wow, this topic needs to be talked about, and this is helping me so much. And that kept me going. That kept me going. Seeing the transformation and seeing that people felt they weren't alone anymore, seeing that it was possible to actually stay in an intimate relationship. Actually, my motto is use the distance. So if your partner's gone, just make the most of developing your friendship with them, you know, because that's one of the key to a successful marriage. And you know, work on your projects, and parent together, because that will be key as well.
Yeah, that was helpful. One thing you've done, I don't know if you realize it, but I noticed you were really good at communicating on social media with your friends and with me when you were stuck. You were not keeping it for you. You were communicating so that people know what you, and not in a pity way, almost in a fun way. Even the terrible COVID situation you were in, even the times when you needed to go to a hospital because you were sick, you communicated it without shame.
Right. Well, I think it's keeping it real, right? It's keeping it real. And I also wanted to write the book. I wrote the book while he was gone for longer periods of time. So we were really in split locations, and I wanted to write it raw, you know, à chaud, as we say in French. So as I was living it. And I think that gave it a quality of, you know, it was practically
authentic,
as I was researching and finding strategies that were working, and I talked to therapists as well family therapists, marriage therapists, when I was researching my book, and all that fed into the book, and parenting specialists. And so it helped me, but it was like, right, I'm passing this on as it's helping me. And so writing the book and researching it actually helped me keep going, but also so the book is really this kind of it's written in real time.
Yeah. I think if I had to summarize, first of all, seeing the purpose, having a strong sense of purpose is what kept you going.
Yeah.
And for those who don't have that purpose, it can be very hard. So I really highly recommend to anyone in that place to get the life coaching or the mindset coaching you need to find that sense of purpose. And once you have it, it's about those strategies that you shared on how to make it work without breaking down, right? How to make it work. And then I see the third step is the accountability. I found like you have surrounded yourself with a lot of support, but also accountability to not give up.
Yes, totally. I think knowing that I had support helped enormously. Yeah.
So good.
Yeah.
I want to talk about the fun part as well. Like when you finished your book, what has happened?
Oh, my word. Well, first of all, I mean, I've had so much support along the way, from friends who have cheered me on from the beginning. And one of them turned out to be an amazing content editor as well. She helped me at a very crucial time in the book, and just people as well from Families in Global Transition and other online coaches, just cheering me on. And also part of the book, because the book isn't just my story, it's also stories from Sunday Schneider-Bean, Vicky Tanner, Ute Limacher-Hiebold, and lots of coaches and people who incidentally have also been solo parenting. So it was very interesting to have that combination. I've lost your question. Yeah, so what's happened? Yes, what has happened? And then the book is out, which is so exciting. And we've had a great launch. So yeah, it's been fun. I've been on a few, there's been Clubhouse conversations around this topic of solo parenting abroad. So everywhere I turn now, I'm seeing more conversations, which I love. I think that the fact that this topic is, the topic of solo parenting abroad is coming up more. This is fantastic.
It's amazing.
Really excited about that.
How about how your son see you now? What are the comments you've heard? I remember there were some interesting comments about the book, and because you involved them in this journey, they saw you transform.
What did my youngest say? He said, "Oh, writing a book is like an addiction." It's all about writing. So funny.
They must be so proud of you.
No, they're proud. Yeah. And my husband is really happy that I found something that I enjoy doing, something that I can develop and grow in. And he's proud of the success of the book and the way that it's being received and that it's been written. Yeah.
Writing a book is a huge achievement, and it's just amazing. And writing a book, knowing the circumstances and the lack of time, literally on paper, it didn't look like possible when we look at the number of hours per day, and you did it. And I loved all the strategies you shared with us here. There's more to come in the book as well. You share so many great tips there. But what would be your final key message you want to share with those who say, I don't have the time. I really want to do this, but I don't have the time.
I think it's really important that even if you think you don't have the time, that it's really important, even if it's 5 minutes a day, to work on something that moves you towards your dream. It's really, really important.
Breaking it down in small baby steps.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Surrounding yourself with
and the proof is you get there, because I did.
Exactly. So Speaking of which, where can we find you? Where can we get in touch with you, know more about you?
Yeah, well, you can go to my website, www.amulticulturallife.com. And for any solo parenting parents out there, there's a guide. So it's www.amulticulturallife.com/guide. And then you can download a guide with 5 questions that'll help you find solutions that will work in your own life, and that'll help you parent together with your partner.
Fantastic. So Nomad Nation, check it out. And I'll put all these links in the show notes of this episode. If it makes it easier, on tandemnomads.com/222. I'll link all the information of Rhoda, and check out her great book, Holding the Fort Abroad. Such an amazing achievement. Thank you for your inspiration, Rhoda. It's been such an amazing source of awe and inspiration to watch you in this amazing journey. And
thank you so much, Amel, and thank you for your support throughout all of this process. You've seen all the ups and downs.
I loved it. And thank you so much for your great insights. Nomad Nation, I hope you found lots of inspiration, and that at this point, when you feel like you don't have the time, build in the strategies to make your goals happen, your dreams happen, and turn your challenges into great opportunities.